Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Property Pros and Cons, episode 16. Episode sweet 16, which means that I have roped or gotten 16 people to come on the show and talk to us. I guess before we get started, I want to acknowledge, since this is kind of related to news at least, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II at the age of 96. Um, it's definitely a very sad day globally, a very sad day for the world. She is the longest serving monarch in England's history, in Britain, the United Kingdom history, and apparently the second longest reigning monarch in the world, with the longest being Louis XIV, King Louis the XIV in France, who built the very famous palace at Versailles. Um, and, you know, so that is something that I think we should acknowledge on our show, and also just generally should acknowledge as a momentous and important um, global event. And also, of course, we want to acknowledge that King Charles III is now the reigning sovereign and monarch of the United Kingdom. So we're going to do that and talk about it. We're not really going to talk about it. This will be mentioned. Obviously, this is a show about real property. Um, the Queen certainly has a lot of real property. There's a lot of castles. There's a lot of the palace at Versailles was, a real property marvel for its time, which is related to real property. And I also, planned a guest before this happened. So we're definitely not going to be talking about the Queen of England. We're going to be, or anything related to castles, actually. We're going to be more talking about building wealth, which on some level is related to, um, you know, at least Britain, not specifically the Queen, but just sort of how the Britain built an empire over time. Um, Definitely used some questionable methods, and there are definitely a lot of issues related to colonialism. Nonetheless, they did build an empire, and they did build a lot of wealth through building an empire. And so we're going to bring on a guest today who will talk to us about building wealth in non-colonial ways. So we're not going to be like annexing or conquering other worlds or lands or countries. We're going to be sort of figuring out how to use the assets that we have to build more assets so that we have more money, which is great. And before I bring on our guest, the one thing that I really want to mention and acknowledge is that it is also the opening game, the opening game of the NFL season, the 2022-2023 NFL season. And my guest, who is a football fan, has graciously agreed to be here during Thursday Night Football's opener between the Bills and the Rams. So that means that if anybody wants to make comments about the game, they are free to do so. And I just want to be really grateful that our guest, Jack Banker, has been here. It is here today during this game. So thank you, Jack. And in a few moments, we will be back with Jack, and we'll be talking about wealth building. All right, we are here with Jack Banker, who is having his delicious drink and also probably has the game on somewhere in the background. Jack Banker is the owner and founder of Banker Wealth Management, and he has been in the industry for over 5 years, and he also sells insurance as well. And he uses both insurance as well as other sorts of diversification, investment diversification, as a way building wealth so that people who are as young looking as he is can have a fairly reasonable way of making money and build wealth for themselves and their families moving forward. So, thank you so much for being with us, Jack.
Thank you, Frantz, for the invitation. This is really fun to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I want to just say something completely random. Normally, my guests will send me a bio and I will talk about them. I know Jack so well that I was able to do a bio without a bio and I was not reading.
I,
So,
I think we were talking about this a little bit before while we were backstage in this virtual world about how we, met each other outside and went on hikes and went to the San Diego Zoo for a little cruises together and just get to talk about life and, breathe fresh air. So I'm looking forward to shaking hands again and like, in this post virus world.
yes, absolutely. Well, so Jack, thank you so much for being with us. And I guess the first question that I have is, how did you get involved in wealth management or building wealth? And in terms of your own sort of wealth building, where do you generally do it? Is it real estate? Is it stocks? Is it insurance? Like, how do you, what's your story there?
That's an amazing question. And to me, wealth is a really personal question as well. I think everybody's got their own risk tolerance and what they're willing to put up with. Can they deal with massive fluctuations? Are they, going to just be like a permable and just buy and hold forever until like, they're retired and age 70 and, receiving their required minimum distributions and everything? Or, are they somebody that's likes to buy and sell and make things happen? And yeah, it just really depends. For me, I'm a real estate investor, stock investor, crypto investor. I've got NFTs. I love risk. I jump into things and try to figure it out and then try to make it as powerful as I can make it. And cash flow, baby. That's what it all matters. Like rich dad, poor dad. But yeah, that's all I got for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you primarily invest in real estate, um, and you want to have cash flow.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we actually had another real estate investor on the show a couple episodes ago, and he talked about, the horrors of being a landlord during COVID in California specifically, which was not fun. I mean, it was
No,
not fun for anybody.
no.
It was like, so the cash flow went to like
That's
zero or negative during
yeah.
COVID.
Negative. I mean, if you're not collecting any rent, then it goes negative because you got to keep paying the mortgage unless you're able to do forbearance. And if you're able to wiggle around forbearance, then maybe still have to pay taxes at least though, but property tax. So yeah, you got to collect rent. I mean, there's a great saying in real estate is you want to buy what you know that you can rent and then live exactly where you want to live, if that's by renting or by owning. So that's just a little saying in real estate that I picked up on the golf course.
That's true. And I also know that you love being outside and golfing.
Oh, I
Um,
love being outside, man.
so when we talk about cash flow, what exactly is cash flow, and why do investors care about that term?
Okay, so cash flow is basically if you start a business, you have a certain amount of inputs to get to a certain point where it's a running business, right? You got to either sweat equity it or you buy a previous business and then run it from there. That's what people are trading on the stock markets. Hey, ExxonMobil is cash flowing, $7, $8 per share, whatever. That seems low to me. Or it's cash flowing $18 per share, price to earnings ratios. That seems high to me. Whatever. And so it's just like it depends on exactly your risk tolerance and what you're willing to invest in. Obviously, if you invest in ExxonMobil, it's not going to go up like by 10x, most likely. I mean, just not very often is that going to happen. Maybe over the course of a lifetime, it could do something like that. But versus cryptocurrencies, you can buy Dogecoin for 6 cents, and then I had some friends selling that for 70 cents, so they more than 10x in like a couple of months. And it's all about how you kind of like size the risk. Like if you're going to bet $200 on on Dogecoin or something like that, uh, if you look at it like it's a bet, like the same thing as going to Vegas to a casino, it's not a big deal. Or but if like you have to make, if you are not able to pay for your food and pay for your mortgage and pay for electric bills, you shouldn't be investing. First off, you should be building up your 6 month uh, you know backup plan if stuff hits the fan. So it's all about your own risk tolerance and what you're willing to deal with. Um, so it's real estate. If you own the house, is a great investment, because instead of paying some other landlord, you're at least paying yourself and like the loan back. So you're kind of building your own wealth off owning real estate. And then if you're a landlord, yeah, just like you said, in California last year when COVID was closing everything out, last 2 years when COVID was closing everything down, you're not collecting rent. Impossible. Courts are closed, so it's impossible to get somebody out. I mean, that is an absolute nightmare as a landlord. And then I picked up some rentals over in Las Vegas, and here there's 5-day pay or quit. So if somebody doesn't pay me rent by the 5th and it's due on the 4th, then I can go to the constable and file, like an eviction notice. They're going to be out after that, gets processed by the courts, and they'll have a sheriff there. So I can get somebody out in like about 15 days if they're really being non-negotiable, not being like, hey, let's just work this out. I'll pay you like half of it now and half of it in 2 weeks, or whatever. But yeah, that's like what you're very knowledgeable on is laws and real estate law, and I'm sure you can, have gone through and found out that some states are a little bit easier to work in than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Some states are easier to work in than others. California, in terms of like the easy states, is like at the very bottom of the list. It's maybe not 50, but it's definitely like bottom five.
The
Uh,
great thing about California real estate is that it appreciates, though, because it's the best place to live. So, even when during COVID, when he was not collecting his rents, and if he was losing out in cash flow, he was still building wealth because he had California real estate, so it's still appreciated. And that's what's so great about California is it's the it's the best weather as long as you're speaking English. Like maybe if you're French, you want to live in the south of France, but if you're speaking English, man, Southern California is nice.
yeah, Southern California is very nice. And of course, there's other parts of California. There's like Raleigh, there's, Central Valley, which are maybe less desirable weather-wise. But yeah, so cash flow, basically, as you said, is just kind of like the amount of money that you're getting net on a
Right.
monthly or
So you can think about it very simply. This is a great one. ALE, assets equals liabilities plus equity. So sweat equity goes into your asset, right? So you can think about that just like a super simple little equation. And then it's also like, cheers to anybody that's drinking. But yeah, so ALE, assets equals liabilities plus equity. So just remember that there's liabilities on pretty much everything. If you have a house, you have a mortgage, that's a liability. And then once you even pay off that entire mortgage, you still have taxes on that property. So that is still a cost of doing business. So no matter what you have to cash flow, at least your taxes, if you own your real estate outright, or you just have another business that pays for it, if you have like a second home or something like that. And I help out with insurance. So if anybody has properties, second homes, I'd love to offer you free quotes and try to save you money.
yes, and that is something that you're actually very good at doing. Um, is saving money. So I'm curious about. So I mean, you're not that old. You're relatively young, and
32.
so I wonder when you're thinking about. sort of like your experience being a landlord, like what has that experience actually been like? What was your experience being a landlord? Like, is it easy? Is it work? Should you have gotten a property manager? Are you happy being in Vegas? Like, what's the deal with that?
Great questions. Thank you so much. So when I first bought the property, I don't think I've played a better round of my golf in my life. You know, I was just like everything was perfect. I was excited, but then you start to get into all the problems, and it's like flipping a unit from being a bunch of poor tenants, and then turning it over into your own tenants. That is a serious process that has taken me about 6 months. I had 7 tenants in 6 months, and now it's very nice to be a landlord. I drove over there. I had my handyman over there today. It, by the way, is my second or third handyman. So it's like, you're constantly, it's running, it's like a football team, man. It's a baseball team. Like you're out there, you're the manager of this property, right? And so you got to plug in the pieces that are going to make it work. And each unit has its own set of tenants in it. Those tenants, you have to evaluate them. You have to like run their credit, see if they're going to be able to pay you. You know, you got to check on that because there's nothing worse than getting new tenants, because then you have to go through that whole evaluation process again. You got the place empty. You have to paint it. You have to get it nice and ready before, so that those are more costs. So changing over tenants is actually, you really want to keep good tenants and make them happy. Earlier today, I was over at the property trying to install antenna, but my property is dated, so it didn't even have the little connectors for it. But I was just trying, it was a total eat. But I was just saying, hey, if I can give them some NFL football and MLB playoffs for the price, and I can hook everybody's thing up, man, that sounds like a nice way to keep them happy. So there's some tenants that, or some landlords that just don't do anything, and they just, have a super low rate of rent, and then just leave everybody to kind of fend for themselves, and then they evict them if they don't pay. And then there's like, I basically cover everything for my tenants. So I am trying to add solar, and that's been a headache. But adding
That's
solar,
probably really great in Vegas because you get so much sun.
so much. Oh yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I'd be saving. I spent $1,500 in the last 2 months on power between all the units. Okay. And if I would have had solar panels, I would have probably only spent like, well, my monthly payment would have been $450. I would have spent $900. So I would have saved $600. So I would have saved $300 a month if I would have had panels. Um, and that $300 could have gone to other things like, fixing up getting a new washing machine in one of the units, getting a new dryer in one of them. Everything kind of adds up in these things. And that's what I mean is like, if you buy one of these units and you've got a bunch of old washing machines and drying machines in them, then eventually you're going to have to fix that. But for now, you kind of just want to drag it out. And that's the cash flow mechanism of it, is like, how long is this going to work before I have to sink in on a new one? Am I going to buy a used one? Am I going to, try to get something for the warranty? What's your play? And that all comes to your risk tolerance, right? So again, everything comes to your own risk tolerance. You really need to just figure that out for yourself and like explore. For me, I would have never had the chance to even have this property and be able to flip these units, because I kind of bought a, beater property as close to the strip as I could, and then flipped it. And so I had to have, a chunk of money laying back, and I would have never had this money laying back if I had not jumped in on Bitcoin. And I don't know if we were talking about that in our first talk, but I definitely was talking to you about the zoo at it. And
Yeah.
Bitcoin was just one of those where got super lucky. I got Ethereum, got a few other ones, and it was just, without those things having gone up, and I was lucky enough to have cashed out some. I mean, I'm down big off my highs, but still, I came out with the real estate, which is also kind of goes into risk tolerance. For me, at that point in time, I had enough chunk of money to where I was like, you know what, I want to take this money out and put it into real estate. because it seemed safer, and it kind of felt like, oh, I kind of got lucky here. So real estate to me is the ultimate, especially cash flowing real estate, like is the ultimate investment, because not only are you collecting cash flow, which can pay for your own life, but you're collecting appreciation if you have it in a good neighborhood and a good area. So it's like a 2-for-1 special. And the best part about collecting appreciation is right now, you don't have to pay taxes on any appreciation. So if you would have bought that California real estate that Frantz sold you for $500,000 for 3 years ago, 4 years ago, now you're up $400,000 on Franz's deal he made with you, and you don't have to pay any taxes on that until you sell, and then skip out on that with a 1031 exchange.
Right.
So yeah, man, and you know all about that. France can teach you all about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 1031 exchanges, so as long as they continue to exist, are a great way of upgrading or finding other properties without having to pay on taxes on the appreciation, essentially on the
Yeah.
equity that you have.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, I guess the other question that I have, I mean, the other term that you used a lot of, and I'm kind of poking at your investor finance side because you have a degree in finance, as far as I remember. Um, when you talk about risk tolerance, what exactly is risk tolerance, and what does that mean? And more importantly, how can people figure out what their risk tolerance is? Like, do they go skydiving and they're like, no skydiving, so I have low risk tolerance, or what's the deal?
It's risk tolerance is different. Some people love to go skydiving or go scuba diving, but they still want to buy super safe investments, right? Because they have a different feeling about money. And money is a very strange thing, because if you grew up in a place where money is abundant, then you have a different feeling than when money is not abundant, right? So it really ties into your whole psyche. Money is something you started learning about when you finally started, paying for your food in college or on your own at age 18 or whatever. So for money, and that's the thing, is risk tolerance is different for every single person. Like there's no getting around it. It just really is. Even if your best friend that you would connect on everything with, they're still going to maybe sell their crypto at a certain level, and you're going to hold because you're like, I think it's going to 1 million, whatever. And then, so there's everybody is different. There's no right answer. You got to find what is best for you and your tolerance. So I can tell you, when I got up to those high levels on cryptos, there were days where, my accounts would fluctuate by 10K in one day. And that's to me, I'm a young guy, and I was like, man, this is enough money to get me in the real estate game. And so I cashed out a nice chunk, and I'll have to pay taxes on that shit. But yeah, it got me into the real estate game, and now has provided me with, and then it provided me with enough money to also help flip it. And then I had real estate on going, or that's my real estate play. And then I got insurance as well working, which cash flows, because that's a very low cost business where, you're just servicing clients and collecting renewals. So you're just getting little bits of cash flow there. And it's just, you're trying to really like look at your money like a pie, and you got to keep some money back, because if you get to zeros, it's game over, man. Like you're filing bankruptcy. There's nothing wrong with having credit cards and using your credit cards, because you got to keep cash in the bank to then pay off your minimum payments. But like you can't, like Warren Buffett said, the whole point of the game is to not lose money. Like I think he said, like rule 1, don't lose money. Rule number 1 is the most important rule. Something like that, as Warren Buffett said. Like sometimes you're going to invest, and that's not losing money. That is in the ale asset, that is adding into your assets, and you're just simply building equity. So it's like two sides of the thing. So yeah, uh, it's really the best way to start figuring that out is probably to start investing. Now, again, you got to collect up some money so you can live a couple months, but you got to start buying stocks. That's the easiest way to get into the game and start figuring out your tolerance. If you start with, even a $100 investment and you buy Amazon stock or something like, it's like 130 right now, but I think you buy fractional shares on some sites. And you see that fluctuate by $10 and you're like, oh man, I just lost $10. Then you're very risk adverse. Okay. Because, you know, things fluctuate, man. Like that's part of the game. But if you get in there and you're like, you know what, I don't want to buy Amazon. I want to go buy a biotech stock, and you're reading into FDA approvals and you're really excited about this CRISPR technology, and you're digging in. You throw your $100 in there, and it's, boom, all of a sudden you buy it at $7 a share, and it goes up to 17. You more than doubled your money. Then all of a sudden you might get hooked, and that's kind of what happened to me when I was in finance in college. I invested in biotech, and that was my first little chunk of money. I had like 2K and bought it. It was called Indosite, and bought it at $3.50 a share and sold it at $27 a share after it got approved. And then I sold. Like, I was like, dude, this is 9x. Nah, man, I'm out. Other people would hold, and then you got to just look at the chart. But yeah, that money then helped pay for my trips to South America, and I wasn't thinking about real estate back then. I thought it was so easy to make money because I was in college, right? And
Right.
and other people are paying for your food in college. So it's just like things change when you're on your own. And yeah, I think that risk is something that you really need to start learning about. And if you want to build wealth, it starts by buying stocks or buying silver. That's another thing I actually did, was I started buying silver coins. I've got like a nice little collection of silver coins now and some gold coins and stuff. But that was like days when I thought the stock market was overvalued. I was like, none of these stocks look good right now. Everything looks expensive. So I didn't, buy a silver coin. At least you can hold it. But
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just like, then you kind of learn about silver, and it's just, and then you buy gold, and you're like, oh, kind of gold's cool. And then I actually traded out some Bitcoin in the 50s for some gold. There was it's called Monet.com. They used to accept Bitcoin. So I was like, man, this seems high. So I cashed out for a little gold. But yeah, it's everything's just kind of different risk tolerances. Things are fluctuating all the time, and if you don't start looking now and kind of building up a base idea of what things are priced at, I also would highly recommend, the best book I've ever read about investing is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. It's Warren Buffett's like tutor coach, and it just talks about real stuff. It's a long book, but read it. If you're serious about making money, you got to read. Like, you have to read, and you have to be following the news. It's just The Intelligent Investor is a great book. Benjamin Graham talks a lot about price to earnings ratios, and you don't have any earnings if you don't have cash flow, right? So that's kind of the fun thing about Twitter, is there's no cash flow on it. They lose billions of dollars a year, but then you got Elon bidding $40+ billion at it. So that's why technology is a little bit different of a beast than ExxonMobil or Lennar or some of these companies that clearly produce something and then sell it, and then there's your earnings. So yeah, I just think to start learning, you got to read a lot. Read Think and Grow Rich as well. That's another great book. That's a short one. That's actually a really good starter book before Intelligent Investor. A little bit easier concepts, but yeah, it's just get in the game. If you're not in the game, you're not playing. If you want to be a player, you got to start somewhere. So start with $100 investment and start reading.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Reading is also really important. Being and just kind of being aware. I think for me, when I started thinking about risk tolerance and learning about my risk tolerance, I think for me, one of the places that I really went was I just like read. I would read about the market. Like I would get,
Yeah.
go whatever, and I would read about the market, and I'm like, okay, am I willing to take on this risk? Like, is this a risk that I feel is like a serious risk, or is this not a serious risk? And you can not actually put money, you can just follow stocks and you can see, what happens. And I think for me, one of the things that I saw in terms of tolerance was like, what is the am I more upset about the possibility of having lost money because this stock went down, or am I more upset about the possibility of having lost money because the stock went up? And for me, that gave me a really good sense of like, what is my risk tolerance?
Exactly, and that's the FOMO that they talk about,
Right.
is the fear of missing out, and that's exactly right. And I think it all comes down to how do you size it. So, like for me, it's really funny. Like when I was in college, I was thinking about things as junior bacon sandwiches from Wendy's. 99 cents, and it's like, okay, is it worth me to go buy this, $25 hamburger? Or I can go to Wendy's and get 25 of those. So like when you're in college, you're thinking about things a little bit differently, right? And Wendy's doesn't mess you up. As 10 years later, it kind of does. So, and then also a dollar doesn't matter quite as much. So then you start thinking about things in rounds of golf, and so I started thinking about things in like Torrey Pines rounds of golf, because like a Torrey Pine round of golf when I lived in San Diego as a local was only like $38 at Twilight. So I would think about things like $40. It's like, man, I could play Tory and have the chance to meet some super rich dudes that can teach me about life, or I can buy this shirt. But I've already got a bunch of other shirts, and there's some that I haven't worn in a little while. So I think I'm going to go to Tory. So like, and then it's just, that's risk tolerance as well. It's like opportunity cost, just like you said, is what matters more to you. And then once you get to the point where you're like, hey man, like $100, like I have no problem spending $100 on a meal for my girlfriend. Once you get to that point of, and that's still small level stuff, but then that's where you really need to start getting into investing, because if you're just spending hundreds of dollars when you know you can go to Wendy's for three, then start making that money matter. And you know that's kind of the thing, is at a certain point you got to man up or woman up, or just
Human up.
take care of yourself and start investing. um, and it's just um, it takes a little bit of risk, and you just got to dive in. And Franz, you know all about that, man.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I remember when I was sort of a newly minted lawyer, and I was listening to a much older lawyer, or not necessarily older, but much more experienced lawyer, who was talking. And one of the things that she said was, the biggest difficulty that you're going to have as a lawyer is you are going to tell your clients that there is this risk, but your client is going to be a businessman or woman, and that's where the risk is. Like that's where the money is. The money is where the risk is, and that's actually something that I didn't walk away from that conversation being like, oh well, that's just going to make my life as a lawyer be terrible. I was like, oh okay, so if I want to make money, I need to look for risk, and that really is something that I walked away from, and I think that that's something that people can really uh, learn from. Like, and it's not necessarily even, it's not risk tolerance isn't always like the risk of losing your money or the risk of making money. There's also some other elements to risk tolerance, like just
Well, time as well.
yeah, that so how quickly you get it, and also just this idea that what, as you said, opportunity cost. So what am I willing to give up in order to have this other thing, right? Am I willing to give up, I don't know, first class tickets
Yeah.
to on a plane in order to be able to have like many more first class tickets, or so that, I mean,
There's
that is
there
real
comes a
important.
point though where you got to kind of like look at things like they're luxury items. Like, like even though you've got 3K in your bank account, um, that you feel like you can blow it,
Right.
doesn't mean you go buy the Gucci bag. Okay, like you can afford that Gucci bag, and that's great and awesome. But like, you really don't want to buy luxury items with money that you actually earned. If you're out there sweating for that money, you don't really want to buy luxury items. You want to buy you want to buy luxury items with money that comes off of your investment cash flow.
Right.
So that's like one of the biggest things that I see with like a lot of people that make serious money at their job is they'll go and then all of a sudden get a Ferrari and get like no, you see the Torrey Pines all the time. These like neurosurgeons that are making like boom, they've been like these residents for their whole life. They've been grinding, and then they start making the big bucks, and then all of a sudden they're spending it just as fast as it comes in, and
Right.
it's you're popping Dom Perignon at the club, and in San Diego, one night like that, there goes 5K, and so you know it all comes to
Yeah.
it's like if that 5K is so worth it for that Dom Perignon at the club, then it is. Maybe you found the lady of your life or whatever, the person you want to be with, and that was the best 5K you probably ever spent in your life then. But if you're just there and you're going to be there the next night too, and the next weekend, I mean, if you're making the money, do whatever you like. But I wouldn't be spending my money like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very valid point. And the other thing that I don't think it was a guest who mentioned it on this show, but on a different show that I had, um, this idea of money working for you. So like if you work for your money, then the money should work for you.
Yeah,
Um, and if it's not working, then it's lazy. And you're thinking about your, I mean, neither of us has kids, but I kind of, liken it to kids, right? You have kids, they do chores, they do things to make your life easier because you're putting work into, feeding them and housing them and stuff like that. And so
take
your
for granted.
money is exactly the same way. If you're working for it, if you're doing stuff to kind of make the money come in and housing it and clothing it and stuff like that, then it needs to work for you to earn its keep.
Yeah,
Otherwise, if you're just blowing it on whatever you want to blow it on, then you might want to rethink some of your choices.
exactly. Because are it's just like what happened to Tatis here. Tatis he's a baseball player for the Padres. Still love the Padres, and anyways, still go to games and stuff. So Tatis, is not getting paid this year because he injured himself and hurt himself on a motorcycle. So he's given up $8 million for a motorcycle, or probably more than that for a motorcycle ride. I think his contract's a little bit smaller in the beginning and it gets really big, but yeah, I mean, it's just like at a certain point, you got to kind of just say goodbye to jumping out of the planes and skydiving and scuba diving when you got a bunch of kids, and that stuff all costs money, and you got to prepare for the rest of your life. I mean, do you really want to live like Elvis and die at 42? Probably not. So it's just you gotta plan for these things, and it's not fun, and it seems stressful, but that's where your risk tolerance comes in, and it should be fun because this is your future that you're thinking about right now. And I talked to my girlfriend about this a lot actually. Is what is a great future that we can like try to achieve. For me, I love setting goals, and you got to have like tiny little goals that help you get to the bigger goals that help you get to the super big goals, right? And if you don't set those long-term goals, then how can you even, if you don't set the long-term goal, then how can you set the smaller goals to help you reach the long-term goal? And then how can you set the many little goals inside the tiny goals? But you have to have the whole perspective there, and that perspective can change. But you still need to have that perspective that what you're reaching for. Otherwise, you can get stuck in the rat race. But if you're like, hey man, I'm fucking on this rat wheel because I'm going to get to that house in Lake Tahoe, then the rat race just feels like you're just running to Lake Tahoe.
That
So,
is true.
you got to have goals, man. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Also, not sure what the network. I'm assuming since this is like a streaming network, nobody cares about the language choices. But uh,
Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
I'm
I've
just
never actually
talking like I'm
talked
on a
to.
golf course right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what anybody thinks about that. However, we did get a couple of viewer questions, which were pretty awesome. So, with that, let us move on to our wonderful Ask the Pro segment, and we'll ask Jack your questions. All right, so I think the thing that triggered this question is what you just said, which is what are your future investment goals as a professional?
My goals?
Yes. I
40,
assume.
40 units by 40 is one of my goals. That seems really out of reach, right? But if you, especially in California, it's hard, but you really want to diversify. So you want to get different laws on your side. So Nevada laws, a pretty good one. Utah laws, pretty good. Louisiana laws, pretty good. And so you want to go and search. There's books on this stuff, and you want to go and search for these states where you can make high cash flow in easy legislative states. And then you want to diversify so that if you get, if all of a sudden there's a blue or a red wave in one direction or the other, then it doesn't affect your whole portfolio.
Right.
So, and also it's, you can buy 4 units for less, 4 units in another state for less than you can buy a normal house in California.
I
Okay.
mean, I think you can buy 4 units in another state for less than the down payment on a house in California.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, and those, you don't even have to go to these things. You can have property managers. You can, it all depends on how skilled at the game you are. And I'm still young in that game, and I can't give you any recommendations on that. But that's definitely one of my goals. I One of my big ultimate goals is to have a dock on Tahoe. Like, so that's serious money there. So yeah, that's I want to be able to go skiing and take out a boat, and I think Tahoe's pretty cool. It's some of the deepest, cleanest water in the world, and you can still be on the Nevada side and have 0% income tax.
That's great. Second question is kind of interesting, which is what investments are you paying attention to now without investing in it?
Great question. So I'm constantly checking the real estate markets, kind of planning out the next, uh, just kind of seeing the market in different spots that look. Again, we're just trying to pick up cash flow properties right now, because then once it kind of becomes into a fortuitous spiral, to where you get just a few units that all start kicking out to where they're cash flowing 2, 3, 4 G's each a month. Then all of a sudden you got like 6 G's coming in, 8 G's coming in every single month, where you're not even really working for it that hard. The hard work comes at the beginning, is getting the good tenants, and then and then all of a sudden it starts to be this fortuitous cycle. So every like couple years you can stack another little property without dishwashers in it. But yeah, so it's and those set goals. And like my girlfriend told me, she's like, oh man, I would never want to go in there and do that stuff. And I'm like, well, I guess I will. And I'll put on
That's
my steel-toed Skechers and wear a mask.
that's
So
why you do it.
yeah, it's just part of the deal. And it's also it's great learning experience as well, to kind of like, I do insurance, and a lot of these other insurance guys have their different niches, and a lot of property owners kind of get into this fortuitous spiral. And so I've been lucky enough to be able to partner up with like a couple of these guys that taught me some of this stuff and let me take care of some of their properties with insurance. And yeah, it's just, you start to really realize what they have gone through to get there and to get things done. And yeah, it's constant problems and constant little headaches and little things to fix, and things that you just kind of got to wait on. And it's another little business. And yeah, I think this is another really good thing I learned on the golf course. You want to have 5 different streams of income, or at least ways of making money. So like maybe your main business is your thumb, because right, That's your main business. But then you need to have like little side hustles, right? So for me, my little side hustles would be then real estate and then investments. So, stocks, bonds, anything that's in, Charles Schwab apps, and then cryptos. So I'm big into different cryptos. I've been in the crypto game. NFTs, I kind of consider that the same space. And then five, I'm still kind of trying to look for a really good five, but I'm kind of leaning into assisting other people with, networking and trying to help out other people. But it's really hard to come up with what you really want to do with your own passion, right? So try to find ways to monetize that. We used to in San Diego have a bunch of fish, and we were breeding different fish and shrimp and stuff like that. And we would go to the in Balboa Park. They had a fish show where all the locals would bring their fish that they wanted to sell or show off or whatever, and we would sell our shrimp there. And so it was fun for us because we would just be feeding them on a normal day, and then they just lived in a good environment with real life plants, and like it was really nice, and they bred, and all of a sudden we'd have too many shrimp, and then we'd just bag them up and take them over to Balboa and then go sell them to somebody else or trade them for a fish. And it's just like there's little ways that you can find fun and find ways to make money in pretty much everything you do. There's people that play video games and make money with Twitch. There's people that make money by walking now with like this step app, where you just have to get like a certain amount of miles in a day and keep the app going, and like enough advertisements come in to where you make like $1 or something. I don't know, but there's so many ways to make money now. I just got to tell you that you want to try to find ways where you can make solid money. Like to be able to make $1 by walking a mile, is that really going to change your life? Well, hopefully it'll make you healthier, but that dollar is not going to do anything for you. But if you can find ways like in our little shrimp, like really we're not making money on those shrimp. It's just kind of a fun little way. We're making like, $20. So it might pay for the meal afterwards. But it was more about the networking aspect of it and getting to network with people that are like-minded, and then getting to find out about them and, potentially being able to help them out with other deals in the future. So, just try to meet people and network and ways to make money on it if you can. Well, actually, Bitcoin, when it was getting started, I bought a ton of these like Bitcoin shirts. They were $5 each, and sold a few of them for $5 of Bitcoin. And then boom, all of a sudden those shirts were worth like, essentially to me like $80. So,
Right.
and it's just like some of these little things, but just, start by the greatest thing about investing though is that with $100 to start your own business and try to make money with your own $100 is nearly impossible. Lemonade stand would be about the only way, and you probably need to find a little girl to help you with that. And so you can buy shares into Amazon or whatever,
Right.
and be in the game, and start thinking about it at least.
Right. Absolutely. And then I think, this last question is pretty relevant, which is what do you think is the future of investing generally?
Well, the stock market's never going away because there's always going to be new companies coming and going. Real estate's probably never going away. Crypto seems to be extremely trendy and a great way for regulators to be able to tax that. So they're not likely to put a block on it. And it is possible. I mean, gold was taken from people in American history. But again, it just, investing is always going to be a thing until we're all communists, for real. And even in China, there's not real communism like that. Like there's still winners and losers. So investing is always going to be around. And I think just building up your knowledge base of what actually matters to you is the most important part. So for me, like I love cryptos and just learning about how you can have a global system without having any certain regulators that can poke around in it. Um, and then, real estate, you're also subject to laws and whatnot. Different stocks, like all it takes is, back when Microsoft or Google got called for being monopolies, that crushes your stock. Like you're crushing, you're just dominating the market. And then all of a sudden it's a monopoly. And then, you're, cut by 30%. So just the stock market just now, boom, down by 15, 20%, and in some areas worse. So it's always going to be fluctuating, and it has a lot to deal with human psyche, and it has a lot to deal um, with election cycles too. So that's a whole nother can of worms to get into. But
Yeah.
once you get into like really like looking at this stuff, um, once you have a lame duck president and you've got good laws in place for business, that's a really good time to be making money in the stock market. An insane, really good time because you're not likely to have very much change going on and you're in already good times. Those are great times to be making money. And then also when the Fed, so if you've heard the saying, don't fight the Fed, right now the Fed is making it hard on business and they're making it hard on friends because mortgage rates are so high. So it's like all of a sudden, that $1 million house was going to be $3,000 a month, and now it's $5,000 a month. That's a big difference for a lot of people, and
Yes.
that that hurts, and that slows down business. And so, don't fight the Fed. When the Fed is raising the rates, everything else loses value because now to buy things you can't buy it with credit as easily. It becomes more difficult. So then things lose value and then when the Fed is cutting rates, being like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This economy is dying right now. We need to cut the rates. That is exactly what happened during the COVID scare. Is they were like, oh my God, we can't let anybody work. Only hospitals, only essential business, and they had to give money away, and they had to cut the rates, and they had to get everything down to almost 0%. And what's going to happen when you are able to buy properties with 3% interest? Well, they're going to fly off the shelves, and that's exactly what we saw because now your more monthly payment is manageable. And and again, when Jerome Powell of the Fed, probably in 2023, starts cutting the rates again, it could be in 2024, who knows? But starts cutting the rates again, that will most likely be a very good time to be investing. Um,
At least in real estate,
in real
because
estate,
that because
stocks,
then
like
money's cheap and
money's cheap.
yeah, exactly. Now money is
Yeah,
more expensive, so that
money's so expensive.
money people are less. So the way I think about it is if people have, a dollar, is just is a commodity like anything else. So if people are like, I will give you, you give me a dollar, I give you this pencil, right? They have to know that that dollar is going to be able to get them something that is worth as much to them as that pencil was that they gave to you. And if
Yeah,
they know that it can't, then they're going to want more dollars.
exactly.
And if they know that it will, then they will want fewer dollars.
Yeah, until there's another place that has something that seems even more easier to transact than dollars. And that's what I kind of got into crypto was I think I told you about my Endosite play. So I traveled to South America and I had to go through tons of different currencies. Every single country had a different currency down there. So I would, have $100 in pesos, in Argentine pesos, and then I would take it over to Chile, and then I would need Chilean pesos, and then I would take it over to Brazil, and then I would need Brazilian reais, and then I would take it over to Uruguay, and I would need Uruguayan pesos. And so then each time you go and bounce around, you're getting hit by fees and you know currency swaps and fees and everything else. So that's kind of why I got into. I was like, man, it'd be so nice if I could just scan my phone. I was just thinking about it. It existed at the time, but I didn't even know about it. And yeah, and so I was like, it'd be so nice if you could just scan your phone and could, go from country to country and not have to deal with all these fees. And then I finally heard about crypto and Bitcoin and was like, man, this is kind of what I thought when I was traveling would be really nice. So I
Awesome.
jumped in. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jack, I want to say thank you so much for being a guest. I also want to thank you uh, for being here during the opening NFL game. Although from the like random lights on your background, I'm guessing maybe the game is on in the background. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
peeking at it.
but anyways, I want to thank you so much for being our guest. Next week there will be a rerun of possibly this show or some other show because I have a really fun special event that I'm going to. But then after that, on the week after that, I will be back with another wonderful, awesome real estate pro. Bye bye.
Awesome, friends. Thank you.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.